Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. So this is interesting. This is from the Bleacher Report. Assigning blame for every team eliminated from the 2024 playoffs. Browns, the reason for it, Cleveland's refusal to abandon the Deshaun Watson experiment. Remains unclear whether Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry ever truly wanted Deshaun Watson, or if the 2022 trade to acquire him was directed by Jimmy Haslam. Also unclear whether the decision to stand by the quarterback through two wildly disappointing campaigns was made by the front office. What is clear, Cleveland has been more competitive when Watson has been out of the lineup. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, you could argue with that point, but if you do, you would have had your eyes closed to what's been going on.
Yeah, you can name a litany of quarterbacks that have gotten that opportunity during that same time span, whether there's Jacoby Brissett or P.J. Walker, and even this year with Jameis. And it's easy to see that no matter who's been under there, the floor has been much higher with other quarterbacks. And some of the, if just for this year, had Jameis not gotten the opportunity, we wouldn't even know what we have in Jerry Jeudy because it did not look the same with Deshaun Watson. And the scary part is if the offense was engineered around Deshaun Watson and he couldn't operate that, what offense could he truly operate?
Yeah, and that's, again, why I don't think you can't say he has no chance. You have to say, we're going to bring him in and let him compete. But he better not be the quarterback, or what are you doing the same thing and expecting a different result? It's insanity.
You can't sell that to the fan base, and you definitely can't sell that to the other 52 men in that locker room. That spiel that Stefanski gave us earlier in the year about Deshaun gives us the best chance to win, that is blatantly wrong. It's false, and you have enough sample size to prove it. And the thing is, people keep ignoring, and the fact is we watched his Achilles snap. He's not going to be ready to start the season. You might see him in training camp, you might see him do some drills, but the reality is that is an injury that takes a substantial amount of time to come back from. And if we were to assign a skill set to Deshaun Watson, his athleticism, which had diminished previously before the Achilles injury, that was his saving grace in Houston. And that's going to take a long time to come back. So I'm not even putting it in my mind that he's an option. Now, obviously, he's going to be under contract because if you cut him immediately, all that dead cap and everything comes to roost much quicker. Whereas if you do it after next season, it becomes manageable. So he's going to be around. It's going to be a storyline. But I'm not even putting it in my head that it's even an option that we even see him on the field in 2025.
This is surprising. Dorian Thompson-Robinson will get the start. He is the 14th QB3, so the 14th third-string quarterback to start a game for the Browns in a season since 1999. The previous 13 third-string quarterbacks combined for a 1-12 record in their first starts. The only winner was P.J. Walker last year against the 49ers. All I can say is yikes. So you've been on the third-string quarterback 13 times since 99.
When I hear that, certain names just flood, like Kevin Hogan or Connor Shaw or Thaddy Lou, It was always this sacrificial goat we'd put out there in the last game of the season, typically against Pittsburgh. And it was like, okay, let's just see what happens. Throw this at the wall. And it never went well. But I'd say out of all these quarterbacks that we're talking about, Dorian Thompson-Robinson obviously has a lot of football in front of him, and we don't know exactly what he is. And in my mind, he's auditioning to be the backup. So we'll see how these last three games go. But out of all those names that flood my head, there are plenty, I would say DTR has probably got the highest ceiling of all those guys.
So offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey today talked about some of the subtleties in calling a game offensively for DTR.
At the end of the day, when it's time to compete, they're going to compete at a high level, and a lot of times those juices get flowing, for a guy like him. And it's, it definitely, you see that come out, but it's hey, let's play within the system. Let's trust our progressions, trust our reads, trust yourself, trust your guys around you, and good things will happen. So I think that's something that's going to be obviously new for me calling it with Dorian. I haven't called it with him except in the preseason, and just gain that feel of all right, getting him into a rhythm as quickly as possible.
The thing I'm most curious about is something you kind of touched on relative to Jerry Jeudy. What do the receivers look like with Dorian Thompson-Robinson? They struggled with Deshaun Watson. They were better with Jameis Winston. What does the passing game look like?
I would say there'll be a substantial drop off. If you just look at the style of play, DTR's is way closer to Deshaun's, where he's going to drop back, probably a one read and scramble and try to make something happen, as opposed to Jameis, who's at least going to drop back and go through progressions, take more chances. Things are definitely more explosive vertically. I think under DTR, it's going to be a much more ball controlled type of thing where you're just trying to get first downs and try to sustain drives. A lot of that's going to be done with his legs. Obviously, the rushing attack takes a hit without Nick. We'll see what Jerome Ford looks like in a feature back role. But to me, this is more of a slog down. Just try to take opportunities away from Cincinnati by extending drives and maybe just ending a lot of these things in field goal range. I don't think you're going to be explosive. I definitely think Jeudy will have to take. He won't see the same amount of targets. If you think about the Cincinnati game, going into that week, you just traded away Amari Cooper. Stefanski comes out talking about how they're going to really try and incorporate Jeudy into the game plan. Deshaun gets hurt, and then DTR comes in. Jeudy did not see a single target until Jameis came in that final drive. So I don't think it'll be the same type of emphasis, even if it's in the game plan. I just think that the amount of attention Jeudy will garner will cause DTR to kind of go away from that. I look at probably 3-4 receptions, maybe 5 targets. So I don't think it'll look quite the same. Obviously, we don't know what Cedric Tillman, if he's going to be able to go. And Njoku looks like he might be doubtful. So I think this passing game takes a backseat to DTR's legs, and they'll just try to extend drives in that fashion.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hi, Dave. Hey, this is Danielle from Manaway. I know I haven't called all season. I've just been so disappointed in the Browns this year, from going from the playoffs to tanking and the whole Deshaun Watson fiasco, which is just a debacle. We need to move on. No one cares anymore. I think we need to go out and get Justin Fields for a quarterback. He's available. He's good. What do you guys think? Because obviously Deshaun Watson is not the answer, and neither is DTR, because DTR releases the ball too fast. He has bad footwork, and I think we need to move on from the Watson experience. Thanks. Go Browns. Woo, woo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I think I'm not opposed to Justin Fields. I like him. I think he's young. I think he has a higher ceiling than he's got too. There isn't one guy that I look at and go, he's the answer. I think you got to go. I mean, cast a wide net, bring me 4 or 5, and let them play survivor in the preseason and training camp.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I think it's just cast a wide net. I think it's leave all options on the table. And I'll agree with the caller. Deshaun's obviously not the answer. I think DTR could still have a future with this team, but if he does, it's as a backup. And whatever flaws he has can be worked out because he's so young, but I still don't see the ceiling for him to be that of a NFL starter. I would lean away from Justin Fields, particularly just because even before Arthur Smith when he was in Atlanta, before he went to Pittsburgh, I thought that was Justin Fields' best ticket to figuring out what his upper bound limits would be, was getting with a run-centric coordinator like Arthur Smith. And then we saw some of the same mistakes that kind of held him back in Chicago when he was with Pittsburgh. He's not a timing guy. So if the Browns are going to lean back into Kevin Stefanski's wheelhouse, I don't think that's the type of quarterback. But like you said, there's no obvious answers, and you're not going to get worse by bringing a player with Justin Fields' athletic pedigree in. I just don't see it as being an obvious answer. But that being said, I don't see an obvious answer to this question, and it's something they have to figure out this offseason.
All right, this is interesting as well as from NFL stats. Teams with the most points per game this season. Lions, number 1, 32.8. Bills, 31.8. Ravens, 29.8. Buccaneers, 28.8. Bengals, 28.5. Fewest points. Giants, just under 15. Patriots at 17. Browns, 17.1. You see the Raiders and the Panthers. The Browns have way too much offensive talent to be that handcuffed offensively.
Yeah, the highest paid offense in the NFL. Getting you 17 points a game, that's unacceptable. It hurt my feelings seeing that graphic because you see those 5 teams, and the fact that you lost to 2 of those teams, that speaks a lot to how the seasons went. And if you just look at those bottom 5 teams, they have a combined record of 13-57. You can't be in that bottom five. That bottom five does not win. It can't win in the NFL. You'd have to have a historic defense to even be competitive. And the Browns defense has seen some regression, and 17 points is not enough. It's you got to be in that 25 and better. You got to be in that top 12 to 10 to really make a run in the NFL. And you saw that last year. You saw what the Browns were able to do offensively from a points per game perspective. Even when they weren't lighting it up, you're still putting around that 20 points and giving yourself a chance week in and week out. And then if you can find a way to navigate and win those one-score games, you find yourself in the plus end of the margin. But at 17 points, it's an anemic offense, and it points to a lot of things that need to change with a retooling on that side of the ball. And for me, it's scheme on down. It starts with you need to incorporate a different type of scheme that really suits what you guys do. You need to retool the offensive line. You got some playmakers, but you need to keep adding. But it's unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable, and that will not get it done in the NFL.
All right, Brown's not practicing today. Myles Garrett, Scott Patrick tweeting this out. Feels like a day of rest to find out about that. And Njoku, hamstring, Harris, elbow, all were on the field before practice, walked inside. Emerson remains in the concussion protocol. Casey, I hate to say this. We've reached the point in time of the season where if anybody's banged up and can injure themselves, not worth it.
Especially if you consider them a roster cornerstone,
Yep.
And those aren't good names to see on there. And I think you're seeing that with Njoku. They're not in any rush to get him back out there. But this is the first week that when you turn around and look, you have the shorter injury list than Cincinnati. Cincinnati actually had a longer list. It took to week 16 to get here, but you finally reached that point in the season. I don't think Myles will not play. I think he will. I think it's meaningful to him to get his 100th sack and to be a leader and show that you suit up. But if there is any injury there, I don't think the Browns will let him play. I do feel that is a rest day. And Njoku, I don't feel good about. Harris could go either way. But you have young guys in that room that you might want to see, so it's not imperative because right now you are in full-blown evaluation mode. And in those snaps that Shelby would play, it might go to Michael Hall, which I think that you wouldn't be mad to see what he could do with an increased number of reps. It was encouraging to see Martin Emerson get back to the practice field. Now, obviously, it's a concussion, so this is just a step in the protocol. That doesn't mean he's going to go. But the fact that he's cleared that hurdle in the protocol this early in the week feels like he could go for Sunday, which would be good anytime you're facing a team as explosive as Cincinnati.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and Barking Browns podcast. Now, step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back.
Ted.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries home for the holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon of the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, I was calling in to say, first, I never knew Kevin Stefanski hasn't had one single healthy quarterback outside of his first year. And also, I would like the Browns to draft Abdul Carter to pair with Myles. And also, in the second round, go and draft Drew Eller or Curtis Rourke. That way, by the time they are ready to play, they have an elite defense behind them. Thank you.
Always appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, Drew Eller, a local guy, has said he's going back. And some draft experts expect him, because of his size and his arm and all those things, to be a top 10 pick when he decides to come out next year. Rourke's intriguing. We'll see. A kid that played at Ohio University up this way. Again, it's a 3-win team. A lot has gone wrong.
Yeah, and like if you bring up a name like Abdul Carter or even a Mason Graham, there's these players on the defensive line that you see keep kind of being available at the point in time when the Browns come up to draft in the first round. And why it just depends what your draft strategy is, like how you view talent versus need, best player available, those certain things. Because if I just look at the Browns' defensive end room going in the next year, I'm happy as it's constituted now with Myles. Isaiah McGuire's shown me enough that I believe he can be a full-time starter. Alex Wright, Ogbo. But do I let those players stop me from drafting an Abdul Carter? No. If you believe Abdul Carter is the best player on the board and someone that could take that room from good to great to exceptional, you pull the trigger. But that also is like, what do you need? You need offensive tackle. There's certain things that you need, but you also hear that this is not a great year for offensive tackle in the draft. So sometimes it's not just being bad. It's the being bad on the right year at the right position. Same thing goes for quarterback as well. If you view maybe two of these quarterbacks in this draft to be starting caliber quarterbacks, they're probably going to go before you get your opportunity to pick. And do they fit what you do? And there's a lot of things that go into that. So for me, it's best player available. And I think that Carter fits the bill for that. As far as just getting a quarterback to get a quarterback in the second round, I probably don't force it because I think you could probably still get a starter at a position that could help you in the immediate future right then, unless you believe that guy is the guy. Chances are, if you believe he's the guy, probably not available in round two. So it becomes a part where you're drafting versus what you need versus best player available. And you're going to have a first round pick. And here's the other part we're not really talking about is this is only Barry's third first round pick. You have to hit it.
Yeah.
You haven't hit either your first two out the park.
No.
Newsome's been serviceable. He's a good corner. Your tackle definitely was an abject failure in my opinion. So whoever you pick with that first round has to absolutely be a home run.
Yeah. You got to get a guy that can start 5 to 10 years for you if you're picking in the top 10. That's what you expect when you pick a guy in the top 10 of the NFL draft. So one guy who is not starting this week, Kirk Cousins, he is benched now. Been connected to the Browns because he played for Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota when Stefanski was the offensive coordinator. He has a no-trade clause in his contract. It's pretty significant because he can basically say, you're not trading me, cut me, pay me what you owe me, and I'll become a free agent, and choose his destination. The Falcons do have to pay him quite a bit. They'll have paid him $90 million for 14 starts. But again, they drafted Penix, top 10 last year. But the point here is, Casey, he'd be able to do basically what Russell Wilson did. He'd be able to sign a league minimum contract to go and play for whoever he wants rather than allow the Falcons to dictate where he goes. And the Vikings could be the team because you got J.J. McCarthy, who coming off an injury, a rookie. It could be the Browns with Kevin Stefanski. And that's the type of thing, again, the whole nother issue is Cousins hasn't played well at all. He's been as bad as Deshaun Watson this year. And that's bad.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. He leads the league in interceptions. It's the ball's completely in his court, though. And one thing to consider is coming off an Achilles injury, and typically it's not the year you return; it's the year after when you fully find out what you are. But his game is not predicated on athleticism. He's a pocket passer, doesn't have an exceptionally strong arm. But it's curious, because nobody's navigated their career better than Kirk Cousins as a quarterback in the NFL as far as talent versus what they've been paid. He has been paid every step of the way, maximized his value, and it looks like he'll get a chance to do it again. They can't. He didn't have to accept a trade. Maybe they offer him a trade that he finds acceptable, and he decides to take it. But more than likely, you see what Russell was able to do last year and kind of dictate where you go. And even though he's played with Stefanski, we don't know what their working relationship was like.
Correct.
And problem is, we're not going to find out from either of those two because they've never come out and say it was good or bad. They're just going to keep it professional. But if he gets that opportunity, it'll be very indicative of how their relationship was when they were working together in Minnesota if he were to take the opportunity in Cleveland. So I think it's something to keep an eye on.
So this is the NFL wide receiver rankings ahead of Week 16 based on PFF grade overall. Number 1, Puka Nacua, 92.4. Nico Collins, 92. A.J. Brown, 91.9. Jerry Jeudy is up to 27th overall. 11 of his 14 targets, 108 yards against Chiefs. Moved the chains 6 times, recorded 2 15-yard-plus catches. He's in the midst of a career year, 70 catches, over 1,000 yards, 5th highest in the NFL. 48 first downs, 4 TDs, 26 explosive gains, 12 catches of 20-plus yards. again, all great numbers. Let's see what happens with DTR. But he was asked about being, mentioned with all those guys in the top 5, and he said he feels like he belongs there, which I want to hear that from my wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore the fact that Puka Nacua is number 1. That was the guy I banged the table on this show way before that draft.
Yeah, you did.
But man, Jeudy's ascension is it's like, no matter how you view the last 6-7 games with Jameis, thank God we got to find out what Jeudy could do. The fact that, like, I don't care if you want to put a label on as a number 1 or not, like, that to me that's inconsequential. He's an elite playmaker. He's someone you have to get the ball in his hands, and you see the good things do when it happens, and you see how he's been able to take advantage of these situations and really demonstrate his value, as someone who can just create separation on all 3 levels, and what he can do after the catch is truly special. And I'm glad that he feels that way. I'm glad that he, when he came in the league, that was probably the expectation he had for himself was to be one of those elite guys, and he didn't get to realize that in Denver. And obviously it started off very up and down here there was no consistency to it. But when Jameis got under center, you started to see what was possible when you run your passing game through Jerry Jeudy. So I'm just very hopeful for what he could be in the future. And I believe there's also room for this kid to grow because, there's certain things he does that I want to see him clean up. I want to see him catch the ball with his hands more, not let the ball get into his body, be a little better in contested catch situations. But just the separation he creates and the damage he can do with the ball in his hands after the catch. Like that, to me, that's someone that's 8 targets a game at minimum. You got to get the ball in his hands because he can do truly special things. He can move the chains and he can break them long, and he can. And so for me, it's whatever quarterback comes in here in 2025, that is something that you have to find to get chemistry with those 2 players because he's someone that you saw can excel and can really push an offense vertically. So I'm very excited to see what he can do in the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, on the subject of Jerry Jeudy, this is from Diana Rossini, national reporter. It has some sources. Reports coming out of New York that Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, nixed a trade for Jerry Jeudy in the offseason because his Madden rating was too low. Sources describe his impulsive over-involvement as the root of what they describe as the Jets' dysfunction. Today in the Browns locker room, Jeudy was asked about that report.
Your reaction to that report that the Jets owner vetoed the trade because the Madden rating was too low?
To be honest, I don't believe it. I think that's a fake news for real. Why would somebody look at Madden rating? Be real. I don't think that's real, but it's funny.
And again, that's a great reaction. Can you imagine? I mean, that's a whole different level of dysfunction.
So when I got up today, it was all over my timeline. I couldn't even tell you who originally reported it until later, The Athletic, but it spread like wildfire. It was everywhere. And if you're someone like Haslam's open, to see that happening, it kind of makes you feel good. You're not going to be the subject of conversation today when Woody Johnson's basing moves on Madden ratings. It's the fact that it's real, like that is wild to me. And for The Athletic to run with that, obviously you got to corroborate that. You got to get multiple sources to confirm that is how that went down. But the fact that people are making decisions based on Madden ratings, and I saw Jerry's tweet afterwards that he blamed Ocho Cinco because he oversees the ratings. But if you're a New York Jet and you're trying to get out of New York, man, just get your Madden ratings down and maybe Woody will deal you. And also, I don't know if you don't follow McNeil out there, you need to. He posted a graphic of Deshaun Watson with nothing but 99s across the board, and he tagged the Jets. So
there you go.
Good work there.
Have solved the problem. Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, this is Bob from Chillicothe. Love the show. Helps me get through all this sometimes. But, hey, blow it up. I'm tired of it. We're Cleveland Browns fans. We always root for the underdog. That's why we stay with this team. Get a new bunch of coaches, a new bunch of players in there. I would rather root for a bunch of guys trying to figure it out than root for a bunch of guys who should have had it figured out and playing like this. Blow it up. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I agree things have to change. As I listen to this, I think and I told you this earlier, I think that the mistake that the Browns made is Kevin Stefanski and the front office went out and tried to tailor an offense around Deshaun Watson. You can't do that. You got to go find an offense a quarterback that can run the offense Kevin Stefanski knows. Kevin Stefanski knows how to fix the offense the Browns were running when it ran into trouble before this year. He doesn't have any answers for this. And clearly, Ken Dorsey doesn't have the right answers either.
Well, I want to say shout out to Chillicothe. That's my hometown as well there, Bob. It was a last-ditch effort. You know, like you invested what you invested, so you wanted to see it come to fruition, and you'd rather see it work than not work, but you tried everything you could to get it to work, and it didn't. So cut your losses. I want to go back to the wheelhouse. Now, you can expand upon that, but like it'd be much easier. We've seen this offense work with Jacoby Brissett. We've seen this offense work with guys that you would consider mid-level, maybe top-tier backup quarterbacks, but like it's because you can execute. You can do things on timing. But for me, it all comes down to the running game. It comes down to that line of scrimmage. And defensively, you still have it. On the offensive side of the ball, man, that line has regressed so dramatically. You got to get back to 4 yards of carry and just moving the chains and making everything look the same until it's not, and being explosive in your passing game based off that. And without that, it feels like they're just spinning their wheels. They still don't. We're in week 16 and they don't have an identity. Like that, for me, that tells me everything I need to know about the offensive directions you have in 2024. So when I don't look at it as a complete rebuild, because especially defensively, you still have a ton of roster cornerstones. So you're not tearing it down to the studs. But on the offensive side of the ball, it's definitely you need to retool. You need to re-examine everything you do, pillar to post. And for me, that starts up front. Obviously, you need the quarterback. But if you figure out up front, that gives you more time to figure out the quarterback because you can execute with the guy who's not exactly top tier, which is more than likely what you're going to end up with in 2025. Even if you draft a guy, he's not, the likelihood that he comes in and he's immediately a top tier NFL quarterback is pretty low. So start up front. Let's get back to running the football, controlling the line of scrimmage and the clock, and then you can build out from there. But until you do that, it's hard for me to get behind any offensive direction they're making right now.
All right, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 bold predictions for the Browns against the Bengals coming up. Dorian Thompson-Robinson has just 1 turnovers, number 1. Jerome Ford, 2 scores in a game. And number 3, Jerry Jeudy connects with Thompson-Robinson for over 70 yards receiving. I'd take 2 and 3. I would like to see that quite a bit.
Yeah, for Jeudy to get that 70 yards, I think he's going to have to do some nasty work after the catch to get there. But I think it's 100% possible just based on his skill set. And I'm curious to see what Ford looks like. There were times last week. The one thing that always hold him back, in my opinion, is his vision. But when he makes the right read, he can really get it. And once he gets to the second level, man, he's got like a building type speed. So when he goes from the second level to the third level, he can really haul and he can leave people behind. So it's about getting him in those positions to do that. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. Without Njoku, what does the tight end game look like? Is DTR going to have a security blanket out there? Because I think he's a quarterback that desperately needs one, and I don't know if Judy's going to be able to be that for him, like a security blanket type player. I'd feel a lot better if Cedric Tillman was going this week. And I don't know what it looks like vertically. I expect a lot of running. I expect a lot of running from DTR. And with a week of preparation, how many designed runs will be in this playbook? And if he can only return over one game, once this game, that'd be a huge win for him based on the way the Browns have been operating the last 6-7 weeks. But overall, if I had to bank on any one of those, it would be Jeudy getting 70.
All right, before I let you go, Joe Burrow has been playing at a high level the last couple of weeks. Jim Schwartz, on the challenges that Burrow presents at defense.
His command, he gets rid of the ball quickly, recognizes blitz. He's really good against the blitz. And, he knows where to go with the football. He's seen a lot of things people do to try to take one receiver out. He knows where his answers are. good command of the run game. You know, they're not running it at a high percentage, but they're running it effectively and, you know, playing to their strengths a little bit. So, you know, it's a challenge every week, but particularly when you got a guy like Burrow, you got a guy like Chase out there, you know, we're going to have to play our best.
It'll be interesting to see. Burrow struggled against the Browns. He knows that, and he would like nothing better than to put up some big numbers here.
Yeah, no lies from Jim there. The one thing he didn't touch on, I think Burrow is the best anticipatory thrower in the game, and Chase seems to have a vendetta against us because that first opportunity he got to go against us, Denzel kind of showed him up. So that's a matchup I'm looking forward to. T. Higgins didn't practice. He stayed inside, so he had a knee designation. So we'll see if he's able to go. But we've seen in the past they have enough guys, and they're going to be explosive. To beat Cincinnati, you got to put up points because they're explosive. They're just going to do that. And so Burrow he provides a ton of problems. It becomes about getting to him, making him as uncomfortable as you possibly can. Their left tackle situation's up in the air right now, so. That's the game to me. Can you get to Burrow? Can you get to him quick? Can you affect his timing? Can you get him off his spot? And can you force him to throw the ball before he's ready? Because if you can't do that, you got to score at least 25 points to even be in the game. And I think Cleveland's going to struggle to put up those kind of points this week.
Casey Kinnamon, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report also co-hosts the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Ted.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries Home for the Holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Good evening. My name is Loretta, and I'm from Dayton. And I've been a fan of the Cleveland Browns for many, many years. And I'm just hoping that no one wants to get rid of our coach because he is a great coach. We just have to get out there and play like he's telling us to do. So I'm hoping that that will never happen. He's really, really good. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, it's pretty evenly divided between the fans. Half of them want to get rid of Kevin Stefanski. Half of them want to keep Kevin Stefanski. Again, I 3 wins, everything's on the table. Even with the owner saying we think we have the right people in place, when you begin to dig into why 3-14 or 3-15 or 3 and whatever they end up happens, things can change.
Look, there's certainly, ways that you can look at this regime and say that, maybe it's run its course. The Deshaun Watson trade alone could be something where you think maybe some heads have to roll and, how poorly it has worked out for this franchise. But if you want to look, at Kevin Stefanski, and now this is the difference with maybe viewing something through a Cleveland Browns lens as opposed to maybe viewing it through the lens of other teams in the NFL. This team did go to the playoffs twice in 4 years, pretty much unheard of. As far as, the joke that the franchise was, the daily, weekly, oh my God, every time this franchise does something, they just end up looking worse and worse. Those things, that stink is off this franchise. I think the thing this year is probably just the disappointment of the play on the field. And normally, look, we've seen bad Cleveland Browns seasons. We all have. I have. You have. Everybody has. But there was always so many other jokes and bad things and embarrassing moments that went along with it. This team just vastly underperformed this year. Were maybe expectations higher than they were supposed to be? Absolutely. I think we all kind of got hoodwinked on that one. So I can understand, there's certainly reasons that if you were sitting there with if you were a judge and sitting there with a gavel, there are viable reasons you could find to move on. There are viable reasons you could find to, keep the course going. I am on the keep the course going, the continuity. I think, yes, it's been bad, but it's not been, as bad as we've been accustomed to in the past. And again, what do? You strip down the roster, you start over, new coaches everywhere. And then, you're not just, pausing it and realizing, that it's going to be a 1 year turnaround. It still might not be a 1 year turnaround, but you make all that change, you're starting to live, with the understanding that it is minimum 2 to 3 years. And I think the fact that where this franchise is now, I think that, everybody would like to see it, basically come back up next year. Changing everything is probably not going to give you the opportunity to even come close to doing that.
All right, this is interesting. This is from ESPN.com, and they ranked the worst mistakes from every NFL team the last 5 years. No surprise. Number one on the thing is the Browns, and it's trading for Deshaun Watson, signing him to a 5-year, $230 million contract. And again, I would say the thing that makes it the worst is the $230 million guaranteed contract. Number two on this list is the Broncos, trading for and extending Russell Wilson. Number three on this list is the New York Jets, trading for Aaron Rodgers. Number four on this list is the 49ers, trading 3 first-round picks to move up to draft Trey Lance. Remember, they drafted Brock Purdy, who's their quarterback. Number 5 on this list. So the 5 worst trades in the last 5 years all involve quarterbacks. It's the Panthers, trading DJ Moore, multiple first-round picks to the Bears so the Panthers could move up and draft Bryce Young. By the way, one of those first-round picks that they traded ended up being the number 1 overall pick for the Bears that they used to select Caleb Williams. The thing I would say, it's a cautionary tale. The Browns need a quarterback. But going out and trying to trade for him doesn't work out very often. Usually, if you're willing to move on from a quarterback, you know why you're moving on from him.
Yeah, and you look at that, and the first thing that is kind of impressive is, with that considered probably the worst move in the history of the NFL over the last 5 seasons, the Cleveland Browns still went to the playoffs last year. The San Francisco 49ers were able to overcome certainly, the trade up for Trey Lance. But look, it shows you how important the quarterback position is. Because basically almost every one of those deals is kind of a sell your soul deal. For Denver, it is certainly, turned out, they've been able to rebound, certainly. The Panthers, Bryce Young certainly looks better. The Jets, it's rough for the Jets. The Browns, certainly, it was the loss of draft capital on top of the $230 million. That certainly has not, it has hurt this team as trying to, be able to overcome Watson's poor play and injury yet again here in 2024. It's you either have it or you don't, and you're going to try to do everything in your power to get it. And when it doesn't hit, it doesn't look good. Obviously, the Falcons aren't on that list, but are, made a huge investment into Kirk Cousins. And as they made that investment, a month and a half later, made another major investment into a quarterback. So basically, they were able to make the huge investment and then basically buy an insurance policy on it with a guy like Michael Penix. It's what you do. I mean, if you don't have it and you truly think you need it, you basically sell your soul for it. You better hope it works out.
Yeah, and again, the thing about the Browns that makes it the worst in my mind is the guaranteed contract. Because now you're
no question.
Now you're trying to figure out how do we get out of this, and there aren't any really good answers, as we know. Jeff, Lloyd, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some free agent wide receivers. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, I'm from Colorado. I think the Browns should go get Greg Williams back in Cleveland because he knew football. With Greg Williams, the Browns were respected more. They were disciplined. They were playing hard football. Tell me what you think. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I don't have anything against Greg Williams. There's a reason he hadn't been in the NFL. I mean, I like his podcast. Jim Schwartz is a pretty good defensive coordinator. The defense, I don't think, has been the problem.
Well, the one thing that kind of makes me chuckle here is I think we all remember Greg Williams' stint from the New Orleans Saints and trying to use the term discipline right here. Look, Greg's a great guy. Obviously, he knows the game extremely well. I think Greg is more than happy with where he is. As we know, there is a way Greg could be serving, in a lot of capacities if he wanted to. We live in this day and age where guys like him could basically, be a liaison for a college program and just sit and digest tape and be, putting together a game plan a week in advance. I don't necessarily think Greg Williams is the correct way to go, but it does go to show you again, that certainly people, are, have questions, and I'd say that's rightfully so.
All right. This is interesting as well. Percentage of pass rush snaps with a pressure. It's from 33rd Team tweeting this out. Tops in the league is Mike Parsons. Myles Garrett is second. Ahead of Trey Hendrickson, Jared Verse, Nick Bosa, and former teammate Zadarius Smith. I've kind of made this point a couple of times. Myles Garrett is having a hell of a year, and it's getting lost because it's a 3-win team.
This is not very different than what the early stages of Myles Garrett's career was like. Basically a great player that was not getting a lot of notice due to overall team performance. Last year, certainly when the team went to the playoffs, it led to certainly, more primetime games, more eyes being on the Cleveland Browns, and a general overall appreciation of the true player that Myles Garrett is. Who knows? We know, weekly that he's, probably not 100%, which probably makes all of this all the more impressive. Not that many players are this time of year. But 2017, the Browns had a major decision to make at number 1 overall. And, at the time, everybody just assumed it should have been a quarterback. Well, they went with what was probably the safest prospect in that class. And, for, a regime that didn't do a lot right back then, that was when they absolutely certainly did. And, Myles has lived up to everything and then some. And, the Browns got to see, one Hall of Fame career close at the offensive tackle position. Hopefully it'll be a while, but we'll get to see another Hall of Fame career close with Myles Garrett one day getting, inducted into Canton.
All right. This is from CBS Sports, ranking the top 25 free agents of 2025. We're going to take a look at the wide receivers on the list. Number 1 overall, T. Higgins flashed the ability to carry an offense throughout his career. Numbers aren't jumping off the page this season, but largely due to injury. When healthy, the eye test shows a high upside. He's 25 years old, and he will likely get a huge payday. Number 9 on that list, Chris Godwin, injured. So he suffered an ankle injury in week 7. He's 28 and has been really good when he has been healthy. 14 on the list, DeAndre Hopkins, 33. That's getting up there for wide receivers. Still has been productive for the Chiefs. And 15 on the list is Stephon Diggs, wide receiver. He tore his ACL in October. It'll be interesting to see what the market bears for him. I would pass on that one. He's kind of forced his way out of a couple places. Higgins intrigues me, but I don't know if you're going to want to pay that, given the fact that Jerry Jeudy's performing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, look, you probably got Jerry Jeudy for maybe half the money. We'll see. If the wide receiver contracts do this offseason what they did last offseason, you got a great discount on getting to Jerry Jeudy early. It's really going to be interesting with T. Higgins because with the switching of representation, so now the same agent represents Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's going to be very weird the way it works. Certainly, I understand the benefit for T. Higgins as they drive up Jamar Chase. That will drive up the wide receiver in general as well. But as you drive up Jamar Chase's dollar amount, and this is on the Bengals because it should have been done last year, not this year, you're going to realize more and more that there's just no way, and even if Joe Burrow and Chase and Higgins would like for this to continue, it's just not sustainable for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, for them to have another year like this year where it's really great on the offensive side of the ball and you have a wide receiver playing basically as, the number 1 wide receiver in the game, you have a quarterback playing at an MVP level, but it's not going to mean anything. That's going to be an issue for them. The other thing is you look at this and look, what did we learn last year? The Browns, and Amari Cooper significantly younger than Nuke Hopkins, significantly younger than Stephon Diggs. And the Browns didn't really want to go any further with Amari Cooper. The Browns, if there is a wide receiver move to be made, and I think there will be, because I believe if Elijah Moore does not resign with this team, they will have 3 wide receivers on their roster who have 15 catches in the NFL. That's it. Everybody else will be below 15 career receptions in the NFL. So the Browns will be in the market, whether it's drafts, whether it's trying to trade for one again, maybe it is finding a way to re-sign Elijah Moore. I'm not saying that wide receiver room is finished, but it certainly is going to close out looking pretty good with what Jerry Jeudy has done this year. And, regardless of his Madden rating, of course.
Before I let you go, are you curious? One of the things I'm real curious to see is what the wide receivers look like with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They didn't look great with Watson. They looked really good with Winston. What happens with DTR?
Look, there was success last year. And look, Cedric Tillman in that Denver game last year, obviously they have a rapport together. We're high school teammates. I am excited to see DTR. I think people think that this is an opportunity for DTR to be competing for the starting position in 2025. No, this is a position for DTR to be competing for a roster spot in 2025. They are probably almost going to sign a veteran quarterback, if not 2, if Jameis doesn't return. They are going to draft a quarterback because, there's been some people who talk about it, and we mentioned Brock Purdy and the 49ers earlier. they kind of got lucky with Brock Purdy. They kind of lucked in at Brock Purdy. The Browns are going to have to take a lot of opportunities at the quarterback position because they kind of really need to luck one into existence here. And so that means, look, I mean, for everybody, there is no safety or roster security if you're a quarterback with the Cleveland Browns as far as, what is going to be the 2025 quarterback room. Basically, what you want to do is you want to make sure you're going to get an opportunity to at least compete for a chance to be in the Cleveland Browns quarterback room in 2025.
They're due to get to luck into something because they sure as heck haven't been able to find one in quite a few years. As always,
tried every avenue possible.
I'm with you. Jeff Lloyd, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best, guys. Happy holidays.
Jeff Lloyd, make sure you check him out. Locked On Browns podcast, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take one more time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Ted.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries home for the holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers' league best record in the NBA. Some concerning news, mildly concerning. Isaac Okoro has a right shoulder AC joint sprain, will be reevaluated in about 2 weeks. That tweeted out by Chris Fedor. Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So, Chris, taking it cautious with Isaac Okoro. How serious does the sprained AC joint look?
I think they are taking it cautious, Dave, but I also think it's something that is bothering him. And it's something that, even when he gets back to playing and he's healthy enough to play, I think there's going to be a level of questions about his effectiveness because the style of player that he is going to be drawn to contact. He plays inside the arc for the most part. He plays around the rim. He likes to get his nose dirty, get some offensive rebounds, battle on the defensive boards. He likes to fight through screens. He sets screens on the offensive end of the floor. So I do think that there is a level of them being cautious, but there's also an understanding that this is an injury that can be bothersome to people. And it can be a tough one for certain players to play through, especially the kind of player that Isaac is.
Another guy that we keep waiting to see, and Max Strus, and I know you tweeted this out a little bit ago, questionable for tomorrow night's game against the Bucks. You also wrote an article, Cavs with the best record, they're kind of anxious to kind of get him back in the lineup.
They are. They have been for a long, long time. Kenny Atkinson, Dave, has been talking about different ways that he wanted to unleash Max within this offense all the way back to training camp. If you remember, the Cavs went to Sarasota, Florida, IMG Academy. They had some time to bond as a team, but they also worked through a lot of stuff on the court in training camp. And that was Kenny Atkinson's first extended look as a new coach at Max Strus. He had watched film. He had talked to a lot of people. And the comparison that he continued to draw was Joe Harris. Joe Harris, the former Cavalier, Joe Harris, who went to the Brooklyn Nets and became a 40% three-point shooter and started participating in three-point contests and stuff like that. So the way that Kenny was planning to use Max was very similar to how he incorporated Joe Harris into the Brooklyn offense when Kenny was there with the Nets for his first coaching go-around. And they want to use Max's cutting. They want to use his off-ball movement. They want to use his spacing that he creates and the attention that he draws away from Donovan Mitchell and away from Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. You know, the minute that you put Max on the floor, defenses have to be aware of where he's going to be at all times. Statistically, he was one of the most effective players that the Cavs had last year from an impact standpoint, from an offensive standpoint. And Dave, that was playing in an offense that Max didn't love. Like, he would be open to admitting that he didn't love the offense. He didn't love the style of offense. He didn't seem like it was one that fit the personnel that the Cavs had. And if you think about all the things that he does and what the Cavs want to be offensively, it's a perfect fit. So they're very excited about the possibility of having Max back. I'm told it could happen tomorrow against the Milwaukee Bucks. Everything that he needed to do the last couple of days in practice, he's been able to do. Now it's just about, okay, how does his ankle respond tomorrow morning when he wakes up? How does his ankle feel after shoot around? Because that's going to be 3 straight days of work on his ankle. The Cavs have been cautious all the way when it comes to this particular injury with Max. They're going to continue to operate that kind of way, but it seems like Max is a guy who is ready to make his return, and I would not be surprised if he's in the lineup coming off the bench on a minute restriction Friday against Milwaukee.
The other thing that has been, guys just seem to elevate their game with this offense with Kenny Atkinson. And again, you wrote an article about Karis LeVert, primary change that has him in the running to be the 6th man of the year. And I don't think anybody would argue Karis LeVert has elevated his game.
He has, and it's interesting, Dave, because I asked Karis about this a little bit in the last couple of days. You know, when Kenny Atkinson got here, so much of the conversation was about, all right, how do we unlock Evan Mobley? How do we make it work between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell? And so much of the conversation was about player development. Kenny's been really, really good throughout the course of his career in terms of player development. Guys have played under him and gone on to all-star seasons or career seasons because the system that he runs is very player friendly. The system that he runs gets a bunch of different guys involved on a possession to possession basis. And the way that they're used is not predictive. Like, defenses don't know who it's going to be on a given possession. Defenses don't know where those shots are going to come from all the time on a given possession. So that level of chaos that the Cavs can create on the offensive end, you know, makes it easier for these guys to flourish, makes it more difficult for the defense. And I asked Karis, I said, hey, you know, when Kenny got here, so much of the conversation about player development was centered on the young guys, Darius, Isaac, Evan, because the belief is young guys are going to get better. The belief is that young guys have different things within their skill set that can be pulled out of them. Whereas, you know, older players, veterans, guys who are on the other side of 30, more considered quote unquote finished products. And Karis said, I don't buy into that notion. Like, this is basketball. Guys can get better if they're after 30 years old. Guys can get better as their career progresses. And I think the way that he's being used within this offense, the freedom that he has within this offense, and the way that he has changed his shot profile. He used to be a mid-range guy, Dave. He's taken 6 total mid-range shots through the first 27 games of this season. He's on pace for a career low there. That's an inefficient shot by NBA standards. So if you take that out of his shot diet and you replace it with a catch and shoot 3, an open catch and shoot 3 that doesn't come off the dribble and Karis having to create for himself because the offense is creating that for him, it just leads to more comfortability and it leads to more efficiency. And that's what you're seeing with Karis.
You know, we heard about Kenny Atkinson's plan, and it's working without question. Again, you wrote another article, and I'm curious. Inside the drastic change that the Cavs made on defense in preparation of the playoffs, What prompted it? What are you talking about? Take us through that article.
The change that they've made, Dave, is that they have become a switch-heavy defense. If you think back to J.B. Bickerstaff and when the Cavs had him as their head coach, everything was about taking away the paint. Protect the paint at all costs. Funnel everything to the two bigs. Be a no-middle defense. And that worked for them. Like, there is no way that you can argue with the results. They were a top 10 defense for 3 straight years under J.B. Bickerstaff. But when you get into the playoffs, a playoff environment usually calls for something different. And Kenny Atkinson saw this in Golden State. He saw it during his time in Brooklyn. He saw it his 1 year with the Los Angeles Clippers. When you get into a 7-game playoff series, you better be able to switch on the defensive end of the floor, because switching on defense takes an opposing offense out of their normal offensive flow. It forces them into more isolation attacks. It forces them into more of a one-on-one game. The Cavs used it against the Boston Celtics when they beat the Celtics earlier this year, because Boston wants to have this free-flowing offense. They want to take a bunch of threes. But if you force them into one-on-one situations, it takes them out of what they want to do on the offensive end of the floor. And that requires Darius Garland taking physical challenges. That requires Donovan Mitchell taking these challenges. It requires attention to detail, focus, communication, all that kind of stuff. And Kenny Atkinson believes that when the Cavs get into the playoffs, because they're more capable of being a switch-heavy defense, that they can match up better with Milwaukee, with Boston, with Atlanta, with New York, with some of these other teams, because it's going to take them out of their usual offensive rhythm. It all depends on whether you have the right personnel to do it. But I think the Cavs believe that they have enough versatility on the defensive end of the floor, and they have enough guys that can guard multiple positions in a given matchup, that they can get away with this. Now, look, that's led to some slippage, right? At one point this year, Dave, they fell out of the top 10 in defense, but it's not about right now. It's not about December. It's not about January. It's about instilling these habits and getting comfortable with a particular scheme that they think is going to benefit them when it comes to the playoffs, because the majority of teams that have won championships over the last 5 years have been near the top of the NBA in terms of switching ball screens. And under J.B. Bickerstaff, the Cavs were near the bottom of the NBA in that particular category. With Kenny Atkinson, there isn't another team in the NBA that is switching more on the defensive end of the floor than the Cavs.
The other thing that does, Chris, is it goes back to what he said. He said, we have to figure out how to be playing our best basketball in the playoffs. And that kind of reinforces this on the defensive side of the basketball.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, if you think about the kinds of teams that they're going to be playing against and what's going to be demanded of the Cavs on the defensive end of the floor, like, it's not just going to be one thing over and over and over again. You're going to vary your coverages. You're going to vary your defensive attack. But you have to be able to have this in your back pocket, this kind of scheme that has proven effective with the right personnel over the last 5 to 10 years in the NBA. And if you're playing against New York, you better be able to switch. If you're playing against Milwaukee, you better be able to switch. If you're playing against Boston, that switches a bunch on defense themselves, you better be able to switch. And you better be able to have multiple guys that you feel like can defend multiple positions in those kinds of situations. And I think because the Cavs have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley as the last line of defense, they're also able to go out there and guard on the perimeter. And having bigs that are that level of versatile, that level of skilled, that quick, that athletic, that can defend on the perimeter just the way that they can defend at the rim, that's an asset that the Cavs have. So you have to be able to take advantage of that on the defensive end of the floor.
Chris Fedor, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime.
Chris Fedor, make sure you check him out. Great Cavs coverage for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.